Founder of the Babes Project, Helen Parker was confronted with her own experience of a crisis pregnancy and discovered very little support, inspiring the beginning of the organisation back in 2009. The Babes Project is changing the way Australians approach crisis pregnancy by supporting women in the perinatal period. This has seen women thrive in their early parenting, leading to positive outcomes for their family. Helen Parker, founder of this remarkable organisation, is our guest this morning. Welcome to Monday Matters. Great to have you here with us, Helen, this morning. Helen, at the age of 20, you're at university and you unexpectedly fell pregnant. What emotions were forefront for you then, and what did the future look like?
Sure. So I was actually in my third year of architecture. I was away from home and I'd had sort of a tumultuous upbringing, moving countries and lots going on in the family space. And so I lived out of home at university and I loved architecture. But even more than that, I loved doing things in the student union and bringing people together. And I was in a relationship, but that relationship wasn't a positive one. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I really had to assess what my life would look like moving forward. As most women would tell you, or most people would tell you, around a crisis pregnancy, it's pretty overwhelming. And you're faced with some confronting decisions. And at 20, I now look back and think I'm really glad that I did have education. I think that gave me some ability to understand the decision-making process, but I also felt really overwhelmed with this decision will shape my future. But because I because I wanted to move forward with my pregnancy, I decided that I just had to make some changes in my life. I needed to prioritize my well-being instead of just being consumed with everything architecture and university and people. And I needed to probably address some of the childhood trauma things that we all come to understand as we become adults. And I did leave university with only 2 subjects to go. But it was the best decision of my life because I did have a baby girl. She was born on Melbourne Cup Day, and it was a really scary time. I didn't have a very present mother, and so to become a mother with not a lot of family in Australia was really overwhelming. But she remains to this day the best decision of my life.
So, Helen, incredible story. So your life circumstances then led to the creation of the Babes Project. Tell us how this came about.
Yeah, so this one is hard to keep into a short summary because much time passed. I think early on when I had my daughter, I started talking to the women, some of the midwives at Box Hill Hospital where she was born. And they were saying to me, this is actually really common because I started this conversation around support. So I'd been to the Salvation Army in Box Hill as a teenager on and off. And the first thing I did was to go back to them. But they didn't know a lot about how to support me to be, I guess, a proactive parent. A lot of what society offers is not holistic. It's about getting some nappies or some food to put in your cupboard or maybe some financial support. But what I was looking for was, how do I parent this baby? We all know there is no instruction manual when you have a child. And I do see that we are quite concerned when things go wrong in the homes with babies and children, but we're not doing a lot about it to prevent that happening from early on. And so I had these conversations with the women, the midwives at Box Hill Hospital. I then started a program in the hospital, voluntary, because they were struggling to get women to engage in their sort of high risk program. And so I learnt a lot. I ran that program for 3 years, and I got married and had another baby in that time, and laid that program down, moved away from that. And then in 2009, just felt like this was still a concern in our society. I was still seeing that women weren't being properly supported. And I'd done some work with the Salvos. I'd done some work outside of that space, and it was something that I felt a very strong pull towards, that nothing was going to change until someone stood up and said, we need to do better. We need to do better as a society. We need to do better to walk alongside young families, because otherwise this cycle that we all sort of condemn, you know, when there's drug addiction and things that are cyclic with families and trauma, is going to continue. And so the Babes Project was started in 2009 as an effort to be a solution to this huge issue that does begin when a baby is in utero.
Now, Helen, the Babes Project is really quite far-reaching, as I've explored it on your website. There are several ways now that you support pregnant women and mums. Can you tell us how you do this?
Sure. So women come into the program. We are heavily run by volunteers. Volunteers volunteer their time between 6 and 10 hours a week. They go through rigorous training. And we have women come in for their one-on-one appointments, and they learn about pregnancy, birth, and their first year of parenting. And why that's really important is because when they go to our hospitals, which is an amazing health system, but it's overloaded, they are in and out really quickly. And we've worked with lots of hospitals that say we are struggling to pick up on things for women in crisis. And so we have the beautiful opportunity and privilege to walk alongside women, slow all of that down, and understand what's really going on. And I always reflect on some of the first women we worked with who were, one of them was 17. She had lost her mum to a violent crime when she was very, very young, and had ended up in foster care. And when she met with us, you know, she could barely look at me, and her head was down and her hair was over her face, and she was just distraught, and she'd gone through the system, and yet she didn't this was a system she no longer trusted, and so didn't want to get help because she feared her own child, when she was pregnant at 17, you know, that her own child would be removed and be part of that system. But she desperately wanted family. And this young woman came into our program, and we walked alongside her. She went through our life skills workshops. She learned about budgeting and finance and nutrition and how to care for her baby. So we do a day with a newborn course. And where the hospitals couldn't do some of that slow work, we could. And when she graduated our program, when her baby girl was one, I should say I was privileged to be in the birth of that baby. And I watched this young woman who'd been distressed for many months literally birth her own family. And just this moment where you see her just find hope again and become a mum. What a beautiful privilege I have in this work. And so when she left our program, we realized, when we said to each other, some of the workers, we're like, oh, she's looking at us. She's looking face to face, eye to eye. She's engaging because she's holding herself differently. She's no longer like this. She's like this because she has a purpose. And we did a lot of work with her and with so many women to not just find their purpose in their parenting, but to use that to understand that they can contribute positively in society, in their communities, as a parent in raising a child. And so it's quite a holistic process and program that we run. And she's just one woman, and she's one example of what we've done and the positive outcomes we've seen over many years.
And Helen, I'm sure that since 2009, since the Babes project has been operating, there are literally thousands of women that you have supported. I know you've already really touched on the feedback from this particular example you've given. Are there any other examples you can give where it's been really quite special as to the feedback you've received from the folk that you've supported?
Yeah, definitely. We see women when they come to us, we see them in quite a lot of distress. And some of the women that we see have significant challenges like domestic violence, maybe drug and alcohol use. And so the way we support them is we do refer to other agencies, but we kind of become the one-stop shop. And what their feedback is to us is that they appreciate us helping them navigate the whole perinatal period. So perinatal is from conception to baby's first birthday, and we stay engaged for that whole amount of time because it's quite a unique time. And so what they're saying to us is, you became my safe space. You were never shocked at my story. We've heard it all. And that's a really important piece, that we're not shocked, that we understand that life is really challenging, especially for people who have had challenging beginnings and a lot of upheaval in their growing up. And so we do understand that a lot of women, it's not just a case of saying, here you go, here's a quick fix, and now all is well. We understand that developmental trauma often means that women go through their teen years and things become even more challenging, and that's when they might find themselves pregnant and things just exacerbate. But when you bring I'm sure you would all agree that when you bring a child into that, we really need to do some work pretty quickly to change the outcomes. And that's what women are telling us, that you have literally changed my path. I never knew I could actually think about what my life would look like with a child, because they're so used to being reactive. And so what we want to do is help them be proactive. And so we've seen a lot of women say to us, and you know, we were recently on a current affair and had some women share then as well. And, you know, one young woman and her partner were in absolute crisis, trying to get off drugs that they were on just to deal with past trauma, and trying so hard together. And it was that little baby that made the difference, because they decided they were not going to lose that child, and they had done the work. And they say to us, it's because we had a safe space where we could come, we could ask the tough questions, and we had someone who would encourage us through it.
Helen, this is a really very, very remarkable story. And we're coming up to nearly 15 years of the Babes Project being in existence. As you look back upon it, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think it would be obvious for me to say I'm so proud. And of course I am. I'm so proud. But there's part of me that feels a little bit grieved, because 15 years is a long time. And I think at the start I was maybe a little bit naive to think that 15 years on, things would be really different. And unfortunately, it's not. Unfortunately, whether COVID played a part in slowing things down, but our system is more overloaded than ever. People are in crisis more than ever. people are struggling to raise their kids in a really healthy way where they can thrive. And so, yes, I am absolutely proud, but I'm also still grieved about the state of our society. And I really believe we need to continue to invest in this space. Otherwise, we will continue to see issues in our communities, in our society that are cyclic. We're not breaking cycles. We're not doing enough to break cycles. We're really good at whacking Band-Aids on things. So I am proud. I am grieved. And those two things just have to coexist. But one of my most proud things is I've now raised a daughter, and 2 daughters actually. And that daughter, you know, everyone said to me, you will be a single mum forever. No one will want you. You know, it'll be tough. And I look at her and she's just graduated her law degree. And I think, if I can do this, it is absolutely my responsibility. When I see her, I see it as my responsibility to ensure other women can raise kids and raise children that are thriving, have opportunity. And I believe that as a community, it's our responsibility to come around them so that we can do that together, so that when their kids turn 25, they're able to contribute to society as well.
Helen Parker, founder of the Babes Project, what a remarkable story, and the impact that literally you have had on thousands of women who've been challenged in this space. And we thank you very much for sharing your story this morning on Monday Matters.
Thanks for having me.